They told me the Maldives would fix everything, but all I found at the airport was my daughter's voice saying, "I forgot to buy you a ticket. Go home and don't come back." For a heartbeat I thought I'd misheard. The arrivals hall hummed with tourists in straw hats and sunburned smiles, luggage wheels rasping over tile, the public address voice calling flights in a steady rhythm that usually calms a man like me. Not that morning. I had a brand new passport in my jacket pocket, a prepaid resort voucher tucked in the same sleeve, and a printed itinerary I triple-checked in the kitchen under the yellow light of the stove hood. $40,000 paid out across months, rooms on stilts over clear water, a private boat for snorkeling, the seaplane transfer, all the things a man promises himself when he outlives his wife and starts believing there might still be a bright day left to share with his only child. I stood there with my leather suitcase, the handle cutting a clean groove into my palm, while my daughter looked at me like an obstacle. "Say that again," I managed. My voice surprised me, steady, not pleading. She didn't blink. "I forgot to buy your ticket," she said, slower, as if I were the one who needed careful words. Her friends hovered just behind her, resort bracelets already cinched around their wrists. Someone checked a phone. Someone laughed. The metal stanchions that formed the line to security clicked as people pushed forward, and my girl, shifted her weight like she might be late if I kept breathing in her way. "You should go home," she added. "Don't come back. I've been a lot of things in my life: husband, forklift operator, church treasurer for a spell, the man who knew which neighbor had a ladder when shingles blew off in a storm, but I have never been unnecessary. Not to her. Not until that moment." "Is this a joke?" I asked. I wasn't angry yet. Anger shows up later, after the shock has lost its footing. In the beginning you just try to place objects back where they belong, her face in the past, the vacation in the future, your money in the bank, and you find nothing fits. Her jaw set. "We can't do this now. We can't do this ever," I said, and I heard the old chalk of my own father falling from my mouth, the voice that taught me to patch drywall and keep my word. I looked down at the boarding pass in her hand. Business class. She'd upgraded herself. "You knew I paid for it all," I said. "Every last part." I tapped the itinerary folded in my pocket like it mattered. "I sold the boat. I sold your mother's old piano. I don't," she cut in, a quiet blade of a word. "Not here." A security officer lifted the retractable belt to let a family with a stroller slip through. The kid craned his neck toward a stack of candy bars and then toward me, the old man with the suitcase and the face you wear when something breaks inside that no one else can see. I realized I was breathing too hard. For a second I could smell the ocean already, because I'd read every description of that island until it was in my head, the salt and coconut and diesel from the little boats, except it wasn't in front of me. In front of me was the place you wait to be told you belong. "Give me one reason," I said. "One decent reason." My voice didn't rise. I don't shout in public. It's a pride I kept after my wife died, this idea that a man can keep his center no matter what the day throws. She looked down at her bag, smoothed the strap with her thumb, and said, "I don't want to babysit you." I felt the leather bite deeper into my palm. "Babysit? You get tired," she said, eyes flicking past me to the metal detector. "The heat, the transfers, the what-ifs. I can't worry about you every second." "I swim laps 3 mornings a week," I said. "I replaced the water heater by myself in January. I stack firewood. Please," she said, and she almost made it soft. "Don't make this worse." Her friends stepped forward, 2 of them avoiding my eyes, one squeezing her shoulder like I was the one who needed comfort. I wanted to ask the friend how long she'd known my daughter, whether she knew the first song I hummed to her, the year the braces came off, the way she cried when I taught her to drive and the steering wheel jerked and I kept my hand steady over hers until we both laughed. I wanted to ask whether any of them had ever stood in a hardware store at closing time with a little girl and a handful of pennies and a clerk who said, "It's on me," while you tried not to show how close to empty your wallet really was. Instead I let the handle go. Blood rushed back into my fingers with a throb. I adjusted the strap on my shoulder and stepped to the side so people could pass. "All right," I said. "Have your trip." She studied me then, maybe wondering if I'd make a scene, if I'd call the bank, if I'd cry. I did none of those things. I just watched her try to decide whether I was going to be a problem or a memory. She chose memory. "I'll text when we land," she said, like she was doing me a favor. Then she turned and moved toward security. The bin swallowed her phone, her belt, her shoes. The metal detector stayed silent when she passed through, and for the first time I hated something for working the way it should. I stood there until she was out of sight. The bracelet on the nearest friend bounced blue light as she waved at someone waiting ahead. A man in a polo shirt asked if I was in line, and I shook my head and rolled the suitcase back toward the sliding doors. Outside, the air tasted like old coffee and car exhaust. A cab nosed forward. I opened the door, climbed in, and gave the driver my address without hearing my own words. "Bad news?" he asked as we merged into the lanes. "Not yet," I said. "Not yet." He nodded like he knew fathers. We crossed the overpass and the airport fell behind. I put my fingertips to the itinerary in my pocket, then to the envelope with the resort confirmations, then to my phone. The notifications were still there, charges approved, transfers completed, everything neat and official. I scrolled further down. A message from my bank, final payment received. Another from the resort, we look forward to welcoming you. A third I hadn't noticed, time-stamped while I stood watching her shoes go into the gray bin, your reservation has been successfully updated. Updated. I tapped it open and read the single line that didn't fit the trip I'd planned, second guest removed from booking. The cab rolled on. The driver hummed to the radio. Far off, a plane lifted into the white sky and curved south toward the blue I'd been promised. I kept my eyes on that one word, removed, until the letters stopped being letters and became something you carry like a weight you never asked for. I didn't speak for the rest of the ride. I didn't need to. There are times you learn more by letting silence spread out and show you the shape of what you're standing in. At my door I tipped the driver the way I always do. Inside, I set the suitcase by the hall table and sat down on the bench where I used to tie my daughter's shoes before school. The leather handle had left a neat red mark across my palm. I pressed my thumb into the soreness until it faded. Then I took out the itinerary and the envelope and laid them side by side. I smoothed the creases with the flat of my hand, the way I used to smooth her hair when she woke from a bad dream, and felt something in me shift from hurt to steadiness. You asked me once, kiddo, how a man knows when it's time to act. I'll tell you now the way my father told me, when the feeling stops running and starts standing still. I folded the papers carefully, slid them back into the envelope, and reached for my phone. The next message I sent wasn't to my daughter. It was to someone who'd been waiting for me to admit what this really was. The cab dropped me at home, but I didn't go inside right away. I stood on the curb, suitcase still in my hand, staring at the house that once held laughter, birthday candles, the smell of fresh bread cooling on the counter. Now it looked foreign. My daughter had stripped more than my place on that plane, she had stripped my belonging from my own life. Inside, I unpacked the suitcase with slow, deliberate movements, each folded shirt feeling like evidence of my own foolishness. I laid the itinerary flat on the kitchen table. Across the top, in bold print, it read, "Reservation confirmed for 2 guests." But when I scanned further down, there it was, the quiet cruelty hidden in plain sight, updated reservation, single guest only. She hadn't forgotten. She had erased me. I sat down, elbows pressing into the oak table I'd refinished with my own hands, and tried to replay every conversation we'd had in the weeks leading up to this. Her voice on the phone, sweet, practiced, "Dad, you deserve this trip, you've worked so hard." The way she'd smiled when I handed her my checkbook, assuring me she'd handle all the arrangements. I thought I was giving her a gift, but really, I had handed her the knife. And what a clean cut she'd made. I called her once. Straight to voicemail. I tried again, and this time the line clicked, only for me to hear her laughter in the background before she hung up. Not even a word. That's when it sank in, she hadn't just left me behind, she wanted me to know I was no longer needed. For the next hour I sat in silence, staring at the itinerary, the receipts, the empty glass in front of me. The house creaked with the sounds of settling wood, the refrigerator motor hummed, but the quiet pressed in like a weight. And in that silence, something hardened inside me. I thought about every overtime shift I'd worked so she could have braces, the piano lessons she begged for and then quit, the endless rides to soccer games in the rain. I thought about the nights I went without so she could have new clothes, new books, new dreams. And now, when it was finally my turn to dream, she had told me to go home and don't come back. I poured myself a glass of water, but my hand trembled so hard the rim clinked against my teeth. That's when I said it out loud, steady and clear, to no one but myself. She thinks I'm gone. She thinks I'm beaten. But this isn't the end. It's the beginning. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the leather chair by the window, the same one my wife used to curl up in, and I began to make plans. Revenge, yes, but not the kind that comes with shouting or fists. No, mine would come quiet, precise, and devastating. By the time the sun rose, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I woke up in the chair with a stiff neck and a clear head. Grief had burned away like fog, and what was left was something I hadn't felt since the day I buried my wife: purpose. You can't buy that with $40,000. You earn it in the quiet, when nobody's watching and nobody expects anything good from you. I made coffee and set out the papers. It wasn't much: a printout of the resort confirmation with my name crossed off, 2 credit card statements, the airport taxi receipt, and a page from the little notebook where I keep numbers that matter. I added one more thing: a photo of my daughter at 8 years old, gap-toothed, holding a kite I'd fixed with tape after a storm. I kept it there not to soften me, but to remind me how far away we drifted, and who had done the rowing. You don't get revenge with rage. You get it with records. I called the bank first, spoke slow and polite, the way older men are expected to speak when we don't want to be put on hold. I asked for itemized posts for the last 2 weeks. I asked for merchant descriptors, not just totals. I asked for the exact time the reservation was changed and which card paid the fee. The rep cleared her throat and read it all out like a grocery list. I wrote every digit carefully. When I hung up, I knew 2 things: she had used my card to upgrade her seat, and the reservation update had been done from a hotel lobby computer 3 towns over at 6:14 a.m. the day before we left. Forgot, she'd said. The word sat on the table between us like a dead fly. Next I opened the storage closet by the back door and slid out the old rolling toolbox. Folks think revenge is about fire. Mine starts with a screwdriver and patience. I took out the envelope marked house and counted the cash I keep for repairs. People laugh at old men who keep cash. Let them laugh. Then I walked through each room and took inventory like a man about to move. Not because I was running. Because I was trimming weight. The guitar I hadn't played since my fingers got stiff. The china set my wife only used for Easter. The coin collection my father started and I never finished. I set aside what mattered and wrote down what didn't. By noon I had a short list and a longer plan. I made 3 calls. The first was to a buyer who loves estate sales more than he loves sleep. He said he could be here by 4. The second was to a locksmith whose father I used to bowl with. I asked for rekeys across the house and shop, and I asked for a certain kind of deadbolt that doesn't look new unless you know where to look. He said 5 o'clock. The third call was the hardest. I rang my neighbor, Miss Alma, to ask if she could keep a sealed envelope in her freezer for a week. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Sugar, I've kept stranger." At 2, I wrote my daughter a single text, you land yet? It showed delivered blue. No answer. Good. People reveal themselves when they think you're waiting by the phone. By 3, the buyer pulled up in a dented van and a soft voice. He walked the living room in slow circles, testing chair legs, tapping table edges, lifting the lids on things like he was greeting old friends. He paid cash, counted slow, then helped me load the china and the guitar and the framed prints of birds that my wife loved. I didn't sell the photo albums. I didn't sell the quilt. Some things are not currency. When he left, the house felt lighter. My wife always said you can hear yourself think better when you clear a shelf. I heard plenty. I sat with a yellow legal pad and wrote a letter. Not a rant. Not a final message. A ledger. I listed the tuition, the braces, the rent I covered when she was between jobs, the flights home for holidays that she left early with excuses that never matched her eyes. I added the 40,000 in neat block numbers. Down the left side I wrote dates. Down the right side I wrote the word that had started to ring in my head all morning, conditions. If a man keeps paying, why would anyone stop taking? That's not a riddle. It's gravity. The locksmith came at 5 and whistled as he worked. You expecting trouble? He asked from the hallway. No, I said. I'm expecting company. He laughed, then stopped when he saw my face. He finished the last deadbolt and handed me a tidy ring of keys. New ones were all silver. The old ones, which I'd collected from drawers and bowls, went into a plastic bag. Keep those, he said out of habit. I'm going to give them away, I said. He tilted his head like he wanted to ask, then thought better of it. Call me if you need the outbuilding rekeyed, too. I will, I said. I already knew I would. After he left, I cooked myself an honest dinner, eggs and toast and a sliced tomato with salt, and ate standing at the counter. Then I washed the plate and put it on the rack and sat back down with the legal pad until the lines blurred. When the porch light snapped on at dusk, I slipped the letter into a thick envelope with a second sheet of paper, a simple document my lawyer had shown me years ago, a transfer on death deed. My wife used to say, know where your story goes when you're not in the room. I had listened. At 8, I made one last call, to the man who owns the little bait and tackle place by the river. We have an understanding. He knows who pays cash on the barrel and who doesn't. I asked him to hold a small box for me behind the counter with my name on it. Nothing illegal. Just a key. Not for any door in this house. Then I walked to the neighbors and slid the freezer envelope to Miss Alma. On the way back, I stopped at my curb and looked down the street. The sky was that flat blue that happens after a hot day, the kind of color you'd pay to see in the Maldives. I didn't feel cheated. I felt awake. Back inside, I wrapped the bag of old keys with twine and set it in the middle of the kitchen table next to the envelope with the ledger. I laid my daughter's 8-year-old kite photo on top. The room went quiet in that way a room does when it's waiting for something to happen. At 9:30, my phone buzzed with a new message from a number I didn't recognize. We land in 1 hour. Don't wait up. No name. No warmth. Just a notice, like a delivery schedule. I typed back, safe flight. Then I pulled the suitcase from the hall and packed for 3 nights. Not to run. To make space. I placed the new keys in my pocket and wore my old work jacket even though it was warm. The weight of it steadied me. Before bed, I stood at the window and let the night settle over the yard. The porch bulb flickered once and steadied. Somewhere down the block a dog barked at nothing. I said my wife's name once, quietly, and promised her I'd keep my own center until the last day I stood. Promises matter even when nobody signs for them. I set my alarm for 2:30 a.m. That's when flights from across the ocean spit people into our tired little airport. You see plenty of things at 2:30 a.m. People carrying guilt like carry-ons, people practicing smiles, people hoping nobody notices what they didn't bring back. I wasn't going to the airport. I just wanted to be awake when she got off that plane and turned her phone on to see what I'd left for her. Because I had left something. I'd left the bag of old keys on the table where she would find it. I'd left the ledger in the envelope beneath the photo. And, tucked just under the ledger, folded once, was a single-page notice I'd printed after dinner and signed in black ink. It was simple, and it was legal, and it was final in a way she wouldn't understand until she tried each door in this house and found the same answer again and again. I turned off the lamp and let darkness take the room. My phone buzzed one more time and the screen lit the ceiling. A new message. Her name this time. Dad, I need you to transfer me another $2,500 when you wake up. Hotel overcharged. I'll explain later. I didn't reply. Instead, I slid the outbuilding key, the one I hadn't told the locksmith about, onto my finger like a ring, and I walked out into the night toward the shed, where the rest of the plan was waiting in the back corner, under a canvas tarp my wife had marked with a strip of blue tape years ago. I pulled the tarp, and the old generator blinked in the dark like a faithful dog. I smiled, just once, and flipped the choke lever. The generator's growl faded into the night as I switched it off, and for a moment, all I could hear was my own heartbeat. That old machine was like me, dented, stubborn, but reliable when the moment called. I laid the tarp back over it and traced the strip of blue tape my wife had left years ago. Even gone, she had a way of reminding me what needed to be done. Back inside, I settled into the leather chair by the window. The house felt different now, taut, like a bowstring pulled back and waiting. Every clock ticked louder than usual, every creak of the wood seemed to lean toward what was coming. I didn't drink, didn't eat, didn't turn on the television. I just sat with the dark, letting my thoughts line up the way soldiers line up before a march. At 3:12 a.m., the rumble of tires on gravel cut through the silence. Headlights swept across the front of the house, washing the curtains in pale gold. A rideshare car. I saw her silhouette through the fogged window, my daughter, dragging her suitcase up the walk, phone already pressed to her ear. She didn't look around. Why would she? She still thought this house was hers as much as mine. She reached the door and pulled out the key. I held my breath, waiting. The first turn failed. The second too. She bent down, squinting in the half-light, jiggling it with more force. I could see her frown even through the glass. A third attempt. Nothing. Dad, she called softly, almost casual. You awake? Her voice, it was that same syrup she used when she wanted something. The same voice she used at the airport, softening forgot into something that was supposed to sound harmless. She knocked, light at first, then sharper. The echo of it filled the hall. Dad, it's me. Open up. I sat still, arms folded. The phone lit up on the table beside me. Incoming call, daughter. I let it ring. Her voice came muffled through the door as she left a voicemail. Dad, come on, it's freezing. I'm standing out here in the middle of the night. The call ended, then started again almost instantly. I watched the name flicker on the screen, my silence answering louder than any word. She leaned close to the glass now, trying to peer through. That's when she noticed the kitchen table. The bag of old keys sat in the center, twine tied neat. Next to it, the envelope with the ledger inside. And on top, the photo of her as a child, the one with the kite I'd patched for her after the storm. She pressed her forehead to the glass, trying to get a better look. What is this? She whispered, though she wasn't asking me, she was asking the house itself. Her suitcase toppled on the step, wheels scraping. She pounded the door harder. Dad, open the door right now. What's going on? I leaned back further in the chair. For once, she was the one shut out, the one waiting for permission, the one desperate to be let in. And I felt no rush to give it. She kept talking, voice rising. If this is some kind of game, it's not funny. Let me in. She shook the handle, kicked the bottom of the door once, then twice. The sound echoed down the empty street. I thought of the neighbors, Miss Alma with her freezer holding my sealed envelope, Mr. Doyle with his insomnia and his back porch light always on. If they heard her, they'd probably just assume it was a family argument. They had no idea what was really unraveling here. Her phone lit her face as she dialed someone else. I couldn't hear the words, but her body language told the story. Hands slicing the air, shoulders tensed, lips pulled back. She was explaining, excusing, maybe even blaming. That's always been her way, talk fast enough and hope nobody notices what you're really saying. When the call ended, she pressed her palms flat against the glass. Dad, please. I need to come inside. For a flicker of a moment, I almost believed the word please. But then I remembered the reservation update, the laughter as she hung up at the airport, the voice that told me to go home and don't come back. That memory steadied me. I didn't move. She sat down on the step finally, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders, shivering. Her breath rose in white clouds. From my chair, I watched her silhouette through the curtain. For the first time in years, I saw her without the polish, without the smile, without control. Just a figure in the dark, small and uncertain. But pity is not the same as forgiveness. I let her sit there, left with nothing but the bag of useless keys staring back at her through the window. Let her wonder what was in the envelope. Let her remember the photo and try to reconcile it with the man refusing to open the door. Because the real answer wasn't in the envelope at all. It was in the shed, under the blue-taped tarp, waiting. And when I chose to use it, there would be no mistaking my silence for weakness ever again. By dawn, she was still on the porch. I hadn't slept, hadn't spoken. Just watched the sky bleed from black to gray to a faint pink. Her phone had died sometime in the night. She sat slumped against the rail, eyes red, suitcase tipped over beside her like a drunk companion. At 6:30, she stirred. She noticed the envelope again on the kitchen table, the keys bundled neatly with twine. She pressed her face close to the glass, mouthing words I couldn't hear. Her hands trembled as she tried the lock one last time. It didn't matter. The door had already answered her. That's when I stood. Slowly, deliberately, I lifted the envelope and carried it to the front door. Her head snapped up when she saw the knob turn. She scrambled to her feet, relief breaking across her face like dawn itself. But I didn't open it. I slid the envelope through the crack beneath the door and shut it again. The deadbolt clicked. Dad? Her voice cracked. Please, just talk to me. I leaned against the door, listening as she tore open the envelope. I imagined her eyes scanning the ledger, line by line, each dollar recorded, the tuition, the braces, the rent, the car, the trips, the 40,000 for the Maldives. At the bottom, my neat signature. And under it, one word, done. Her fists beat against the wood. You can't do this. You can't just, the words dissolved into muffled sobs. I walked away. Not in anger, not even in triumph. Just in clarity. Out back, I opened the shed. The tarp came off, the generator gleaming in the first morning light. I pulled the cord. The old engine roared awake, loud enough to drown out the pounding at the door. Connected to it was a box I'd prepared, powering the cameras I'd installed in every room over the past 2 weeks. She thought she had erased me, replaced me, shut me out. But now every step she took, every word she spoke in this house, every attempt she made to twist the truth, it would all be recorded. Not for her. Not even for me. For the lawyers, the courts, the people she thought would believe her over me. When I came back inside, the porch was empty. She'd gone, suitcase dragging behind her down the street. She never looked back. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the imprint of the photo frame in the dust where I'd moved it aside. My wife's voice came back to me, steady as ever, know where your story goes when you're not in the room. I knew, now. The locks were changed. The account secured. The cameras running. She could scream betrayal to the whole world, but the paper trail was mine. And one day soon, when she tried to come back for more, she'd find out exactly what silence can build. I folded my hands, rested them on the table, and let the quiet return. Because the real revenge wasn't the locks. It wasn't the letter. It wasn't even the generator humming in the shed. It was this: she would never again be sure if she still had a father, or only a ghost who had decided she was no longer worth haunting.